Recorded to the cloud. There we go. I made this mistake the last time I was doing something and I recorded something to my computer, but it wasn't the computer that I use at home. Anyways, long story short. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our career panel that we're doing today on STEM, but specifically biology adjacent degrees. So I wanted to have us, so everybody has the questions. I'm going to go through and ask the questions, and then I'll kind of pick individuals to answer those questions, and then pass the torch to the next person. So if you have the questions up, it'll be a little easier when you get to your turn to remember what the question was, because sometimes it takes a little while to get back to that. We'll do our best to get through all of the questions and have everybody respond, but it is possible that we might have to move things along. We'll go ahead and start with our introductions. So I'll start with Laura. Did you want to go ahead and give us your name, your job title, and how long you've been at that current position, and what degree you currently hold or are working on, if you're working on a degree?
Sure. Thank you, Danica. And it's very, thank you very much for inviting me. It's exciting to be here. I'm going to be one of maybe the outliers because I come from the commercial, the business side of the biologic in the science industry. My name is Laura Jacanin. I'm the VP of Business Development for a developer. And I've been in the position for several years now. I've been in this field for most of my career. My degree, though, is in communication and religion. I had an interest in going into maybe therapy and such like that for people, but it turns out that I wasn't interested in that, and I totally pivoted away. So we'll talk about that, I guess, some more as we go on.
Okay, just to briefly follow up on that. So how is your field related to STEM?
So great question. My field takes the biological and the therapies that a lot of companies are developing. So you're developing a cure for cancer, let's say. You're going to be that will start in the university. That research that we all do in basic research and beyond. That's where those innovations come from. Those therapies then translate into the market to become cures for cancer and diabetes and stuff like that. My role in that whole process is to help the clients, the customers, the developers actually that are developing the cures. We help them get it up and ready to get into clinical trials.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification. So the oh, sorry, it's a very Monday day. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm scatterbrained. So you are the go-between between the production side and bringing things to market, basically? The
innovative side. So
okay.
if you're a scientist and you found this new cure for something, it's awesome that we find these cures, but how do we get it from here in our lab in the test tube all the way through to be in somebody's body to actually cure the cancer and so on that we're trying to do? And so my company works with those developers that are in those early stages to help perfect their recipe, so to speak, or their process, their manufacturing process, to get it streamlined so that they can then eventually get into GMP and eventually get into the market so that we as consumers and patients get to take advantage of those therapies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. And hopefully this is kind of a precursor to how I'm going to ask these questions. So there'll often be times when I'll just kind of follow up on something you say and try and clarify for the audience. So thank you, Laura. Jessica, do you want to tell us a little bit about your name, your title, and how long you've been doing that, and what degree you currently hold or are working towards?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Barba. My title at the Natural History Museum is the field technician, but really it's like a bio field technician. I also do GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. I do report maps. I create the surveys for field collection. And they also recently just put me on paleo for fossil prep. So like my boss is always saying I wear many hats at the museum. So yeah, that's 3 of the things I do at the museum. I have a BS in biology from SDSU. I got my associates after my BS in GIS at Mesa, and that's actually kind of what helped actually get me into biofield. And I'm also currently working on a Python certificate through continuing education right now because it helps with GIS. And I've been doing this role at the museum for 4.5 years now, but I started volunteering about 10 years ago.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can we have Hugo? Do you want to share with us?
Yes, my name is Hugo Medina-Muñoz. I've been in my current position, which is a postdoctoral fellow at UC San Diego, going on 4 years now. I have a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
What is there a particular area of research that you are engaged in?
Yeah, so throughout my PhD education and even now during my postdoc, I've been doing a lot of technique development, and we focus a lot on RNA. My focus now is on developing a method to examine the RNAs that specific proteins that regulate their expression associate to. They can associate to thousands of RNAs, and in my lab, we came up with the strategy to mark the RNAs in a manner that we could detect them using just general sequencing. So the reason these proteins are important is because they're actually central to gene expression regulation. So they're very relevant to human health if they have mutations that interrupt their binding or their activity. They can be associated with brain disorders, with heart defects, you name it. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Hugo. And Alexandra, I promise I won't make you last next time, but if you could share with us.
Sure, Alexandra Bortnick. I'm a staff regulatory scientist at Dexcom. I've been there for 2 months. Before that, I was at Fate Therapeutics for 1.5 years as their program and alliance manager. I have a PhD in immunology and a PMP, a project management professional certification.
That's exciting. Those are a lot of acronyms. You guys all have lots of acronyms that you filled in. That's fun. Did I get everyone? I think I did. I apologize. I'm just seeing the people who are in my screen. So let me just double check. I think I got everybody. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so next question. Let's start with you, Alexandra. So what drew you to a degree in biology or a biology adjacent field? And what did you know what you wanted to do with that degree when you started to pursue it?
Yeah, so as an undergrad, I was a double major. I majored in biology and English. I did not know what I wanted to do with biology per se. I was interested in human health and for family reasons, interested in autoimmunity in particular. So I knew I wanted to understand more about autoimmunity and the immune system in general. And so really it was that curiosity that guided my interest and my decision to major in biology. I thought that I might want to go to medical school or graduate school. And so those were things that I explored when I was an undergrad. And then ultimately that led to my decision to pursue my graduate work. So that's a little bit about me.
Just a little background on this question. I think that a lot of our students tend to go towards a degree without necessarily knowing what that degree means in terms of a job or in terms of hireability, things like that. So sometimes it's difficult to connect those dots. And so what you're doing right now is a tremendous help for them, because it's okay to be there, right? It's okay to start your journey where you start. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to communicate with this series. So thank you so much for that, Alexandra. Let's see. Hugo, do you want to go next on this one?
Yeah, sure. So when I started my undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had an older sister that was attending the same school as me, and she was pursuing biology because apparently pharmacy, which was she was pursuing, pays really well, and that's really initially what drew me to that career. So I majored in biology, and I wasn't really motivated to become a pharmacist, but I really enjoyed my biology classes. And while I was working through my coursework, I was doing well in it, and eventually I received an invitation to join the Mark MBR's RISE program at CSUN. So this program, if you're not familiar with it, introduces minorities to, or students from minority backgrounds to research. And they pay you to do research. And, I needed a job. So I figured I can work in something that's related to what I'm studying. And then, that'll help me pay the bills and also, do better in my classes because I'm working to do something relevant. But it turns out that I really enjoyed doing research, and the program is aimed at preparing students to enter grad school. So I just continued. I continued to do my PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. There, I also loved what I was doing. Was there for 7 years, and then I'm still involved in research because I enjoy it.
Wonderful. Is there a point in the future that you could see yourself going into private sector, or do you prefer
So where I'm at, going into a faculty position is something that's considered extremely competitive.
Right.
So it's not really guaranteed. I am preparing to enter a faculty position, even applied for grants already that will help me make the transition. But I am exploring biotech. There's plenty of opportunities in biotech where we can do meaningful work and continue to grow as scientists. So
Perfect.
there really is no losing, I think.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Hugo. I think if we're going backwards, would that make Jessica next in sharing?
Yes, that would be. So I actually was an art major at first. I thought I would like to do interior design, and then I had this little voice in my head like, let's do bio to try to do veterinary school. And then I realized I really didn't want to, as much as I love, cats and dogs, I'm like, maybe that's not the right path. And I got an email from a lab at SCSU for herpetology. And back then I didn't know what herpetology was. And I answered, I was like, oh, they're probably not going to respond to me. They don't know who I am. And they actually took me in. I helped a master's student with one of her projects. And that's kind of what got my feet wet with, liking field work. And I was like, oh, if this can be a job, this would be amazing. And my whole time I thought I'd be with the fluffy, cute animals and, deers and like Snow White in the forest. But it was herpetology, and I learned to love herps, lizards, tortoises. I've got to work with a lot of them at the museum, and it's been really great. But yes, I did not know what I wanted to do. And even after graduating, I'd always say I felt like a leaf in the wind, just floating around, not knowing what to do. I was volunteering at so many different places trying to get a foot in. And it took many years for me, but I eventually found my position at the museum. Don't give up.
No, that's wonderful. Our journeys can be long, and they can be many pronged. So absolutely. So Laura, you don't have a degree in biology, but obviously you're in a biology adjacent field. So was that an intentional move, or was it something that just kind of happened to you?
It did just kind of happen. And listening to some of the other panelists here, I think that's a common story for a lot of people. And that makes me kind of reiterate what you just said, Danica, and that is just don't give up. Like, don't think that you're going in this path and it's not the right path. If you like what you're doing and you're finding something, continue, and then feel free to pivot. So as I mentioned, I wanted to go into family and child counseling. But then when I had that opportunity and started a master's program I just could never envision myself sitting in a room listening to people's problems all day. It just became like, oh my gosh, this is my career choice. And now I'm realizing this is not what I want to do. So I just kind of took a position that was offered in selling labware, pipettes. If someone knows what a pipette is, I worked for Rain and Instrument, all of my career, helped in that company so well in terms of developing a sales program, in terms of developing a marketing plan and strategy and all sorts of stuff. Again, on the commercial side, not on the scientific side. But that simple position there in instrument pipettes are not that complicated, right? It's really not complicated. But that position allowed me to parlay that experience and the experience of working in the lab and working with scientists to understand the process. I took some courses at UCSD. It's the extended courses. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Extension. Yes.
Extension. Thank you.
Yes.
Extension. And all about the drug development process. And through those courses, kind of along with some of experience, I was able to get a job with a company that does manufacture for companies. As Hugo was mentioning, he could take that science that they're doing in that lab, they can translate that into a broader picture where it can actually have an effect to affect people's lives. So I'm in that section. And then in addition, I decided to complete a master's under the law school, Pepperdine School of Law, I should say, it's a master's of dispute resolution. So it has to do with just resolving disputes with people and companies, again, on the commercial side, but it's interesting how many different directions you can take your education, no matter what that education is. You don't have to, be a biologist if you don't want to. You can go into a whole plethora of different areas. But just moving forward, I think, is the best advice. Did I answer that question completely?
You did beautifully, Laura. So I was going to ask, I think that it's actually relatively common for people who work in research and development, who work in R&D, to if they so choose to move into the sales side or into quality control, or there are areas that are not just R&D of these companies. So even if you're really enjoying work that you're doing, maybe at some point you say, you know what, I've done this for 15 years. Maybe I want to try something different. So that's a nice thing to know as well. As I've talked to several people who that was their journey, right? They started in one place and then they ended up somewhere, similar or adjacent, but not necessarily in the same position that they started out with originally.
And if I could just add just quickly onto that, when I was working in a position where I had to hire people, I looked for people that had been working in a lab, that had been working at the bench, that wanted to do their PhD and then realized, oh, this isn't what I want to do. But I like talking with people and I like engaging and teaching and helping people understand stuff. Those are the people that I would hire in a heartbeat, because they knew what they were doing. Right. They just didn't want to sit in a lab.
And I think that's a perfectly, that we, as we explore our education, we also explore ourselves and our own proclivities, the things that are interesting or comfortable for us. And I think that's a really common experience. That was my experience in graduate school. Was I got into research and I thought, this is really neat. I just don't want to do it. I want to be with people. I want to be interacting. And so the classroom, being in front of a classroom, was a natural fit for me. And so mine is a relatively short journey, I think, compared to a lot of other people, but the journey, I let the journey take me where it needed to take me, right? And that flexibility, being open to, it's not a failure to change directions, I think, is a really important thing for students to hear, right? That can be part of your success. It is part of your success, right? Is learning to listen to yourself when you're thinking, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So explore, right? See what else is out there. Go ahead, Alex.
I just want to add that I really appreciate your saying that, because that's a message that I think resonates not only at the undergraduate level, but also at the graduate level and then at the postdoc level. It keeps kind of recurring again and again that there are many different paths and all the paths are great paths. There's not just one path.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not just one job. Yeah, there's always this kind of finality at the border between degrees where it feels like, okay, this is it. Now I'm done. And that's it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new story, right? So yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Those were all amazing responses. Okay, so I'll start picking on Jessica this time arbitrarily. So how did you learn about your current field and what were the resources that helped you move from degree to career? So I think you kind of already started exploring that a little bit in terms of the herpetology course, but I'll let you take.
Yes. Well, that helped. And I was just looking for anything, in high school. They pretty much made it seem like you could get your degree and bam, you'll have a job. And I kind of graduated around the recession, like a little bit afterwards. So it wasn't that easy. Most of my friends who graduated around the same time, it took them years to find something in their field. So they had a detour. I was a face painter at first at the zoo for a very long time. So I got to use my art side. But I was, like I said, volunteering at the animal shelter at Project Wildlife at the museum in the herpetology department. And I went back to school GIS at Mesa because a lot of the jobs I wanted to do said you need to know GIS. And I was like, what is this GIS? And I got that associate's degree and did an internship with the NAT, and I stayed around long enough and they were like, hey, we can hire you to do field work, be out in the field playing with lizards, not really playing, but taking data on them and helping them be better in the wild, basically. And so now just doing volunteering helped being brave enough to answer that email, because honestly they emailed me twice about that herpetology lab at SDSU. The first year I ignored it because I'm like, who's gonna, I don't have any experience, they're not gonna want me. And the second year I'm like, I'll just answer, what's the worst, they'll just not answer me. And they answered and I got it. And that one answered email helped me find my way into the museum, all these little steps.
Absolutely. And I think that that's such a common experience for our students, and especially as they transfer, that you kind of think that somebody has something that you don't have, right? That there's like a right person for this job and you're probably not the one. That kind of imposter syndrome. So no, I think that's a great thing for students to hear, that no matter how old you get, you still will have those experiences.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I just muted myself. Hugo, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of just stumbled onto my field, trying to get into another field. So when I finished my degree, I also graduated around the recession, and I couldn't find a job in my field. And I mean, I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but my wife at the time, we had come to an agreement that, okay, I can go to grad school, but I'm going to apply only to California schools. Well, none of them accepted me, so I had to go into the workforce, and I worked for an entire year at a company that produced like microscopic parts for like grenade detonators and stuff like that for for like the military. So nothing related to what I was doing for my undergrad. But actually, what has made the difference for me, and one of the biggest resources, is my undergraduate advisors. So I never lost the goal of wanting to go to grad school, and my advisor kept reaching out to me, and I let her know that I was having a hard time getting into grad school, and she suggested that I should widen my net and apply to schools in the Midwest. And I applied to Michigan State and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. A lot of these schools sometimes have like these umbrella applications that apply to multiple programs. So well, I was initially looking for microbiology programs. I ended up applying to like cell biology and biochemistry programs. Yeah, and I got into the biochemistry program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which I never thought I would ever, you know, end up studying or be interested in, or, you know, even wanted to, because biochemistry has like this it has bad fame for being, it's infamous for like being a really difficult course. So when I was in my undergrad, a lot of people went out of their way to avoid that course. But again, another deal with my wife, you know, she wanted to not live in Michigan. So I only got into the biochemistry program at Wisconsin and not into like the cell biology or microbiology. So I took a risk, and it turns out that I love biochemistry. And I, you know, not having taken like the prerequisite courses, I went in, took advanced courses, and then made up the prerequisites, and just I flourished. I loved the subject, loved my lab. You know, we started getting into like RNA research, which has broader application. So I think me not getting into microbiology programs initially actually turned out better for me. And then again, when I finished my degree, my undergrad advisor reached out again with a, you know, an opportunity here at UC San Diego to join a program called Iracta. And this program is an NIH-funded program that prepares underrepresented scientists to enter faculty positions. So yeah, it's a lot of serendipity, and also mentor. I have a lifelong mentor that to this day, she checks in and sends me opportunities. And I think that's it's a really important factor I think that students should consider, is to seek mentors. And even if they get rejected, because there's a lot of busy faculty out there, you know, just keep reaching out to professors that you feel you gravitate towards, and ask them for help, ask them for career advice.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. And I think that that's a common experience. I think we all have mentors that have helped us along our path. And it's hard to take that first step of kind of asking, like, what do I do to go down this road? But I really appreciate the fact that you're saying I was trying to go in this direction, and that direction just wasn't opening itself to me. And I think that that's a common experience of students, even at an undergraduate level, right? Is I don't have the GPA to get into, you know, this school of biology, perhaps, but maybe if I'm open to it, I could get into the chemistry department and pursue biochemistry. And that, you know, there are interesting and fruitful experiences that we can find along many paths, right? So kind of widening the net, as it were, and not getting too small a focus about the direction that we want to go. I think, if anything, I think that was one of the things that kind of dissuaded me when I was in graduate school, is I decided, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to work on, right? And so I went and I found the lab that I wanted to work with, and I applied to the lab, and I got in. And as I was doing my rotations and I saw what their students were working with, I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to go into that research. And maybe there was other research that would have appealed to me, and perhaps that'll be something that I explore later on in life. But yeah, so, you know, deciding this is the only way is always it's gonna narrow the path and the opportunities, right? So yeah, I think that's a great thing. And hopefully listening to your wife when listening to your family, you know, be mindful of the fact that your family is also an important part of your life, because that was another point in my journey that you know, I didn't want to be a mom and be in a PhD program. So, you know, biologically speaking, there were questions that I had to answer for myself at the age that I was at when I was in graduate school. So other things to consider.
Yeah, I want to add that I don't want to make it seem like, oh, my wife's not letting me do what I want. It's more like
Oh no,
an independent person is, you know,
100%.
is making me consider like certain
Of
aspects
course.
that are important to our lives
Yes.
that I don't, because I have like this tunnel vision.
Mhm, mhm.
Working toward this goal, you know. But yeah,
I definitely didn't mean to imply that. More what I meant was that there are more things in our life that influence these choices than just our vision, right? And one of those for many people is their family, right? Whether it's, you know, caretaking or whatever role that plays in your life. But yes, absolutely. And listening to those people, because a lot of the times those people are our people because they know us, right? They have good things to remind us about the things that make us happy or that we want. So no, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. All right.
I was just
Laura,
hoping that I didn't imply that.
no,
Yeah.
not in the least. If you're not, don't worry, your wife can watch this. All right. So Laura, did you want to jump into the discussion there?
Yeah, sure. So I've kind of explained, you know, how I got to out of school, that is, and into sales at that time. But that was really a lower level kind of sales. It was transactional. You buy this and you pay, you know, someone buys it from you and you they pay you money and you sell it, and that was kind of it. Whereas the position that I've moved into in the last, you know, last several years, many years here, is more about a larger framework to build relationships with. Because what I'm working in sales, I'm taking, for instance, what Hugo and others in those labs are working on, and I'm building relationships in order to take that that, you know, product or those proteins or whatever, and translate them into an actual cure. So for me, it's a much longer term relationship. I'm working with people today that I've been working with for 10 years because that process is so long. So to get into here, and specifically cell and gene therapy, which is very exciting, lots of promise. It's not a pill you have to take, it's curative. And that just really inspired me. You could do a lot of things in your life and make money. And I'm not a scientist, I can't cure cancer, but if I can reach out and make, you know, deals and negotiate scopes of work and such so that that product can be manufactured and actually get to patients, then I feel I have that one little notch, let's say, in the overall process. And I think the resources in terms of getting from where I was to where I'm now really is about a good network. I had the blessing to have so many, you know, really thoughtful, intelligent, smart people in my life throughout my career. And I think maybe, you know, Hugo mentioned about your undergrad professors, you know, that, but then everyone else that you work with from here on, consider that like consider those assets. Those are assets that you will, you know, never burn a bridge, right? These are assets because you will run into these people again and again and again throughout your career. It's unbelievable what a small world it is, specifically sometimes in these science areas.
I think that's beautifully said. I think all of you highlighted what is the heart of this question, which is the resources that I think most of us find most valuable are people, right? They're people that have helped guide our path, have introduced us to opportunities, have encouraged us to attempt things that we might not otherwise attempt. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you all so much. All right, so this one is going to be really different from all of you, and I'm so excited about hearing about this. So describe a typical day of work in your field. So Laura, do you want to start us off with that? Because I think yours is the most distinct. So
okay, sure. So I travel about 50% of the time. So my days are not always the same, but one typical day would be to get up pretty early, to be on the computer, to be responding to people that are asking me questions, to work with clients on problems. I'm involved with Teams meetings or Zoom meetings on a regular basis to hear, what issues, what scientific problems they're having, or what issues they're having in terms of getting the product into the manufacturing point where it can be moved forward. So there's a lot of hands-on kind of work with people to try to figure things out. But then in addition, I also get to fly around quite a bit. So I work here in San Diego. I work remotely. This is my office. I've been here for 20 some years, but my clients are global. And where we manufacture is global. So I'm traveling quite frequently to Switzerland or to Singapore or different places all over the United States as well to meet with my clients, but also then to introduce them to my company and to our manufacturing facility. And that step of catering to people in that way, it makes all the difference, because you're working with folks and you're talking with people and you're helping people get from where they are to the next step in whatever process it is that you're working with. And I find that very exhilarating.
It's really, really exciting to hear about. And I think that that's another reason why people go into sales often. So, or transition out of R&D, for example. There are a lot of opportunities for travel, right? There's also opportunities for working in offices abroad. So a lot of these companies are multinational and they have headquarters in many, many different places all over the world. So would you consider your position remote, or do you have an office that you work? Okay.
No, in fact, I've always been remote. I've never worked in an office.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical of sales in general, right?
We really want you to be we really want to be closer to where our clients are. So I've always kind of had a West Coast presence.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a big difference. Yeah.
But that's kind of nice in terms of your flexibility, right? If you're like, if something in your life presented itself to where you needed to move to another city, that's a flexible part of your job. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And there is a lot of flexibility in that. The other thing I'll add on, though, is companies that I've worked for and working for now also hire tons of scientists. Sure. And tons of people that are science.
Is that my internet or is that Laura? These are the fun times of Zoom. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, I think that might be Laura.
Oh no, she dropped out. Okay. Well, we'll come back to Laura. Let's go ahead and have Alexandra, if you want to chime in on your workday.
Sure. I don't have a typical workday yet, since I've only been at my position for 2 months. But I'll say, so I'm hybrid. 2 days in the office, or 2 or 3 days in the office, and then the rest at home. And that was also true of my previous position, another program management position. I work collaboratively with colleagues all day long, which I love. So that often on Zoom, as Laura was saying, I spend a lot of time reading and synthesizing information. So industry news, publications, attending conferences, listening to webinars, and then sharing those sort of key outcomes to my colleagues. I also do a lot of writing, responding to FDA draft guidances, and synthesizing literature summaries, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's great. It's very diverse and very collaborative, which I love.
Wonderful. Yeah, you have a little bit of everything there. That's really exciting. All right. Jessica, did you want to go ahead and be next up to bat?
Sure. So I also don't have a typical workday. It kind of has like seasons. So right now it's kind of the down season. There's still field work happening, but I'm mostly in the paleo lab, helping with fossil prep, and also creating those maps for the reports and gathering the data from ArcGIS Online for data analysis. But if I'm not doing that, I'm in the field, and our field projects range from being in El Centro to being down in Baja in the San Pedro Martir Mountains to being in La Paz area, we do, our region in the museum is anywhere Southern California and Baja California. So it just depends on the need. There's been times where I've been called in like, hey, can you come to the field on this day? Because, somebody can't come for whatever reason. I get random emails where it's like, we need a report map. Can you do it by the end of the week? So it just depends. I kind of triage what's requested of me, what's highest priority, and I work on that. But it's a good flexibility of indoor, outdoor. And I have the opportunity to work from home at times because GIS, as long as you have a cloud-based program, you can work from home. But I prefer going in because then I'm more productive.
I'm with you. I prefer the separation. I need to work when I'm at work and be at home when I'm at home. So boundaries are important.
Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome back, Laura. Sorry, did you want to finish talking? We lost you there.
Yeah, apologies. I'm not sure what
No
happened.
worries.
But, I dropped off, but the only thing I was going to press to say that there are a lot of different positions, even outside of a commercial role, but in companies that are in this business, either they're manufacturing or they're developing, cures, and it could be process development, analytical development, quality control. I think you mentioned all of these different aspects we all need, and we as a humanity, we need everybody and all of our skills to come together in all these different parts in order to cure some of these really tough diseases. So sorry, that's all I have to say about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hugo?
Yeah, for me, I like how Jessica mentioned that her work comes in seasons. For me, it's kind of like the same. I feel like the first part of my time here, I've spent doing a lot of wet lab work, planning experiments, ordering reagents, collaborating with others to get work done. But now at the end of this project and transitioning into a new project, I'm doing tons of reading, writing up the report, responding to reviews, applying to more funding and stuff like that. So I right now I have more of a balance towards working from home. But initially I was just at the bench, like 40 hours a week.
That's the most balanced bench schedule that I think I've ever heard anybody admit to. So
Well, I ended up working more than that, but yeah.
all right. I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like you might be withholding on that one, but that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip over the next question because I feel like we definitely talked about opportunities for growth as we were kind of going through the conversation. And I would like to get to what I think is a really important question for our students, which is, do you feel accepted by your colleagues and in your profession overall? Do you still experience imposter syndrome sometimes? And if Hugo, if you would like to start us off with that, that'd be great.
Sure. So yeah, I would say that I do feel accepted, but I have struggled with imposter syndrome, and it has gotten better. And like it's like life, like once you figure out and deal with the problems that are bothering you, you get some new problems that you have to like worry about. So like at first in grad school, I used to be terrified to like go in front of people and give talks, which is kind of like bread and butter for what we do. But now I've overcome that, and now, but yeah, luckily, struggling with like, and depending on the background of the students, they might have similar experiences, but I don't think these are like universal. And it also might depend on personality. So like struggling with like hyper independence, trying to do everything on my own instead of asking for help, which I'm slowly realizing, especially after applying for like this transition into a faculty award, that no one does on their own. Like a large part of the application is like the support that you have from your mentors, from your institution, and their commitment to helping you while you're establishing your lab. But yeah, people have been really generous. And I think a lot of the struggles that I felt have come mostly from imposter syndrome and feeling like I may not belong. But I've been lucky to have had a lot of like colleagues that have helped me deal with these challenges.
Would you say that your colleagues and your network is the number one thing that kind of helps you get through that?
Yes, definitely. So it's partially my colleagues. Another part is also my family. I am very open with with one of my oldest sister. I talk to her often about any problems that I'm facing. My wife is also like, I'm really open with her. And I've been lucky to have landed in labs where like my boss is like ends up being like the most patient person in the world. Like it's one of the things also that keeps me in this career. Like sometimes you make mistakes, and it's accepted that it's part of the research process. You make mistakes, you cross them off the list, and you don't make them again, and that's fine. But yeah, typically like leaning on, everybody has their role. I lean on my coworkers for like work-related challenges, making tough decisions. I lean on my family, and then my mentors, my lifelong mentors. When making like big career decisions. But yeah, I feel like even though imposter syndrome might not be something that you could totally avoid, there's definitely people around, if you can identify them, that could help you get through those tough times.
Yeah, and I think sharing those experiences is really, really helpful too. I think that's one of the things as an instructor that I see on a regular basis, because my students are constantly in that kind of imposter syndrome, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. So I'm in a position to constantly be the reassurer. But yeah, no, that just to know that there's no point in life at which that fully goes away, right? I'm standing in front of a classroom teaching you, but I don't know everything about life, and I'm only qualified to teach this one thing over here. There are other things that I struggle with, and even in the things that I teach, I'm still constantly learning, new things, new ways to approach situations. So yeah, wonderful, awesome. Thank you so much, Hugo. Alexandra, did you want to piggyback off of that?
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. I really think that, you have these networks of people in your life that you look to help elevate you at times of self-doubt. And I think everybody has them. I've talked to CEOs of companies that say they have imposter syndrome. So I don't think it spares anyone. And, it kind of many ways like unites us. So yeah, certainly something that maybe with age, it's something that kind of you learn to get used to. And so it's less impactful, I think, with age. At least that's my experience, but it's, ever present.
Jessica, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, my colleagues are very like awesome. I wouldn't be at the museum if I felt like everyone was critiquing me. Like they still critique you, but in a way to help you learn, not to make you feel bad or anything like that. And they're very encouraging to try new things. And if you do make a mistake, you learn from it. And I do have imposter syndrome. And there was a meme I once saw where it said, not that I lied on a resume, but like when you lie on the resume but still get the job, and it was like a black and white cat in a room with skunks or something, it's like you feel like, oh, like, do I really belong here? So that I always think of that, but I do think it gets a little bit better. I still struggle with it. Thinking about grad school, I'm always like, should I do it? Am I going to do okay? And you just got to take a leap of faith and trust yourself, because I've proven to myself many times things I didn't think I could do, like drive to the desert by myself and work in the field. I would have never imagined that when I was undergrad. But you just do. You learn, and you have to trust yourself. And if you make a mistake, you learn. You're always learning. Nobody knows anything. And the more you know you don't know.
Yep. Yeah, beautifully said. No, I think that's great. That's great. Laura, anything you'd like to add to that?
So sorry. No, 100%. I would just say 100% on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a scientist. I have a degree in religion. Yeah,
I'm not laughing at that. Sorry.
that I'm selling contracts, to scientists and to companies that, is way out of my depth and way out of my depth.
But it's not, because you bring a skill set to the table
True.
with the skills that you have learned along the way. And I think that's the invaluable lesson here, right?
Yes.
Is that no matter what the path is that you take, you as an individual have things that you bring to the table, and those things are helpful, right? It's just figuring out how to utilize that skill set and where it can best be applied. I think for a lot of people, the environment that they work in is a big driving factor, right? Are you happy working where you're working? Because if you're not, then maybe there is another area for you to explore. But I think we've probably all been there as well, right? We've all had jobs that that were not the one, right? So realizing when you find that there are limitations or ceilings that you're reaching in a particular area, that it's okay to look for other areas.
And also, I would say, to my experience, it's all, for me, it's been about taking risk.
Sure.
And I think that taking risk is scary, because you are going into an area where you may not have full understanding. And so what do? You research, you figure it out, you do the work, you do the hard work that goes into figuring out what I need to do to make it right. And if you, like you said, if it's a mismatch and this is not what I want to do, then it's better to bail. Absolutely.
Thank you all so much. Okay, so last question, and I know we're coming up against the clock here. What advice do you have for students who are just starting their degree in biology? Are there any recommendations, cautions, tools, things that you would recommend against, or that you would recommend to try? And Laura, I'll start with you.
Oh, goodness. I would say, follow your heart and take risks. I mean, it's hard, because your hearts go in many different, my heart goes in many different directions at times, but just get to know yourself and get to know really what's good for you, and also not be afraid to fail. I think we talked about this earlier. We only have, like in my world, we only have the therapies that we have to cure cancer and all of these other things because of all of the failures that took place, in the last 50 years. If you don't risk and you don't fail, you might not succeed. So take the big risk, do it. That's what we need as a humanity. We need those big leaps.
I love that, Laura. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Jessica, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just trust yourself. You know what you want the most. Keep trying. I did not pass a lot of my classes when I was at SDSU. I had to retake them a couple of times. Give yourself patience. Don't give up if it's something that you really want to do. And look at jobs that you want to do. Like I was looking and I saw that a lot of them require GIS, and I was like, okay, well, let me go take some courses and hopefully this will help me get a job, which it did. Kind of see what jobs are out there, even if you're not ready for it, and you can try to start stacking up your skill set on what you want to potentially do.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's go, Hugo.
Yeah, to add to the advice that people that already gave, I would say that, like Laura said, pursue things that you're interested in. And also, one thing that I learned is that, when we think about doing well in our careers and in school, we often think about, only focusing on what needs to be done at school or at our jobs. But I find that being okay in other aspects of your life is also extremely important for you to be successful. So if you have a medical issue, or you're finding that you're feeling sad more often than what is normal, that is something that you want to deal with correctly, because it's it could get in your way in the long run if you don't resolve those issues. And I think that's the biggest piece that I can give from my experience, is to, take care of these other things that are maybe not directly involved with your career trajectory, but will have a big impact on your success if you do not manage them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that goes for health, but it also goes for life events, right? To give yourself space when things happen. It's not necessarily completely derailing to say, I need to take a semester off, or I need to take a break because I need to process. That's a solution, right? It's not a problem, and it's not a weakness, right? Absolutely. Thank you. That was a wonderful point, Hugo. Alexandra, do you want to wrap us up?
I'll echo what Hugo was saying, that it's really important to not neglect your other interests, your other hobbies and talents outside of your academic ones. You never know where that leads and the people you'll meet in those places. And also just to stay curious. I think it's great to, we don't really know what the future holds. In fact, science is moving really fast. So I think it's important to stay curious, read, ask questions, talk to people, have coffee with people, and I think it's, meet people and connect. I think that's always good advice.
I love that. And I think the thread in all of your comments there is optimism, right? And it's not blind optimism, but there's a lot of good out there. We have to work to find it and to get it and to make it ours, but it's there. Wonderful. I want to go ahead and wrap up on that note. If any of our panel guests have any questions, I will put my email in the chat. If you would like to forward those to me, I would be happy to forward those to our panelists. Any other comments or things that you wanted to add? Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time. Go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think that this class and these classes in these years have so many opportunities. And I would love just to be available as well to those, and I'd love to mentor anyone who's interested either in the commercial side, but also in the other aspects. I have a lot of connections, and I'm very eager to help share and to help, prosper, the growth from here on.
Yeah, wonderful. And if any of you are interested in hosting students for internships or anything, please contact me about that, because we have a whole separate department that I would love to talk your ear off about, that connects students with these internship opportunities like what Hugo was talking about. And I think they're really, really formative experiences for a lot of people, even if it's not the direction that you end up going in, to discover what the directions are that you might be interested in going in. So wonderful. Thank you all again so much for your time. This has truly been a tremendous opportunity for sharing out with our students, and I really appreciate all of your time. So thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all. Bye.